morning. Welcome to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal religious presence in Braintree, Massachusetts since 1833. As Unitarian Universalists, excuse me, we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all persons as we engage in an ongoing search for truth and meaning. So whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome into the life of this beloved community. My name is Diane Doucette, and I will be your service associate this morning. If you are visiting us for a first time or would like us to reach out to you, please fill out a welcome card found in the pews and place it in the blue basket by the door as you leave the sanctuary this morning. Assistive listening devices are also available as you enter the sanctuary, and there are toys, books, and coloring crayons in the back of the sanctuary for children of all ages. Due to the persistence of the COVID virus, we ask attendees seated in the pews to remain masked and safely distanced throughout the service, and we invite you to come along to our hymns. After the service, everyone is invited to gather outside for conversation and refreshments. If you have not already done so, please take this opportunity to silence your electronic devices. And now this morning, the chalice words. As we light the chalice. Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice flavor and embody the power and the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and to share. The words of our chalice song are on the screen above.
Together in peace, warm every heart, silence hatred and fear, fill us with love, burning peace.
We light the green candle to affirm our commitment to caring for the planet that is our home. Please join me as we say our covenant. We covenant to create a caring, affirming, and inclusive community that invites us to become our best selves.
Thank you, Diane. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you all joining us remotely. Our opening words this morning are by Elizabeth Tarbox. As we journey through life together, we come to recognize that ours is a story of faith, hope, and love. It is our need for one another that binds us together, that brings us limping and laughing into relationships and keeps us at it when we otherwise might despair at the fix we are in. It is the holy we need, the eternal beyond our comprehension. And one place we can find it is here, working and celebrating the essence of life together. There is a transcendent value worthy of our loyalty, upon which we may set our hearts, and its divine manifestation is love. Blessed be. Please remain seated and join me in humming or singing our opening hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 1008.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Our first reading this morning is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. The root of the word courage is cor, C-O-R, the Latin word for heart. In one of its earliest forms, the word courage had a very different definition than it does today. Courage originally meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. Over time, this definition has changed, and today, courage is more synonymous with being heroic. Now, heroics are important, and we certainly need heroes, but I think we've lost touch with the idea that speaking honestly and openly about who we are, about what we're feeling, and about our experiences, both good and bad, is the definition of courage. Heroism is often about putting our life on the line. Ordinary courage is about putting our vulnerability on the line. And in today's world, that's pretty extraordinary. Each week, we take time to share our important joys and concerns so all of us might help carry the burden or join in the celebration. If you wish to acknowledge a sorrow or joy from your heart, I invite you to come forward while remaining masked and socially distanced to light a candle or drop a stone in the water. You may do so silently, or you may come up to the microphone, tell us your name, and briefly share. I light this, well, I'm not going to light a candle because there isn't one lit and I don't want to start that. So I'm going to drop a stone for all that remains unspoken in our hearts. Spirit of love, we lift up those who have experienced a sudden death in their inner circle of life. Leaders in the community, matriarch and patriarchs in our families, teachers, and other loved ones. We also lift up members of this congregation who are struggling with illness and are hospitalized. And we want to give our support and our love and care to their caregivers. And for friends who live on the West Coast, who are immersing themselves in technology and going live for the first time this morning, we raise you up. Spirit of life, we give thanks for petting zoos on church property. What could be more joyful than that? May we share our abundance with those in need of our love and care. Blessed be. For all that is spoken and unspoken, let us now take a moment of silent meditation. Our second reading this morning is by David White from his book, Consolations. Courage is our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community, a work, or a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything, except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply, and then live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. Parenthood is a timeless test of courage and alignment. To be a new parent and live up to and into the overwhelming power and helplessness of that new love is the heartfelt, robustly vulnerable, and courageous realigning of one life with another. The first courageous step of parenthood may well be to enter firmly into complete bewilderment and into a fine state of not knowing. And I see people nodding their heads. As new parents, we may not even know what the word parent means. We may not know what to do or how to get through. We live literally to the point of tears and fears, our own and our child's. There's no enemy line to throw ourselves at, no glamour in the outward show, no medal of honor to be earned, only a courageous inner bearing that will come to outer fruition at a later time. As actual parents or not, we become courageous whenever we live closely and to the point of tears with any new possibility made known inside us. From the inside, it can feel like confusion as we slowly learn what we really care about and allow our outer life to be realigned by that inner gravitational pull. With maturity, that robust vulnerability comes to feel like the only necessary way forward, the only real invitation, and the surest, safest ground from which to step. On the inside, we come to know who and what and how we love and what we can do to deepen that love. Only from the outside and only by looking back does it look like courage. Please join me in reading our responsive reading in your order of service by George G. Davis. And I'll start by reading the first line in each paragraph. To be strong enough to gain some mastery over ourselves.
Humble enough to be willing to learn.
To be brave enough to choose the right road, no matter how hard it may be.
And patient enough to keep honest.
To be wise enough to know our own shortcomings.
And honest enough to admit the excellence of others.
To be proud enough to command the respect of strong individuals.
And gentle enough to win our own.
To be careful enough to protect the goods of others.
And generous enough to share our own.
This is our aspiration for today. Each week, we have an opportunity to give thanks for the blessings we have received in our lives and in our church community. Our offering is a chance to give back in support of the work and outreach of our church. At this time, our morning offering will be electronically given and received, and any in-person offerings may be placed in the blue basket to my left as you exit the sanctuary this morning. The way of love is a courageous path. Love calls upon us to engage uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And our willingness to be vulnerable requires nothing less than courage. To speak from the heart about who we are and how we experience one another requires the inner strength of courage and a level of commitment that arises from our deep positive regard for one another. It is love that gives us the courage to be vulnerable. Recently, I had the opportunity to go camping with my nephew, his wife, and their 3 children, ages 3, 7, and 9. From my last visit with them, I knew the 7-year-old, who's very athletic, had been reluctant to remove the training wheels from his bike for quite some time. So once I reserved my site, I sent him a private message on Facebook to say how excited I was about going camping with him and how great it would be if he could come visit me on his bike, because my site was on the other side of the campground. I ended the message with, "You are amazing," and signed it with love. 2 days before the camping trip, he called me on Facebook to say he had learned how to ride his bike. And there goes one now. We were all so thrilled. His willingness to risk uncertainty and potential injury in learning a new skill was fueled by our love for each other. This is the way of love. Yet our culture would have us believe that vulnerability is a sign of weakness, that to be successful, we must be invulnerable. But for a child, that might mean never learning how to walk or ride a bike. Without the courage to be vulnerable, we cannot open our hearts and minds to learn new ways of being in the world. And this is true for adults as well. When conflict arises in our relationships with coworkers, friends, family members, and romantic partners, love calls upon us to live in the tension, to surrender the tyranny of our own defenses. Who can relate to that? The tyranny of our own defenses. Isn't that a great line? To surrender the tyranny of our own defenses, to hear another's story, to honor another's truth as our own. So together we might create and embrace a new way of being in the world. This is the labor of love. When I visited Israel, Palestine in 2013, I learned the way of love is also the way of peace and reconciliation. And I just want to preface this story by saying we visited both sides of this region, the Israelis and the Palestinians, and each side is engaged in peacemaking. But the story I'm about to tell you is from the Palestinian side, and it's the one that stuck with me the most. During our visit to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, we met with the Imam at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, who told us about a time when Palestinian militias captured 70 Israeli soldiers and brought them to the mosque for safeguarding. Rather than abide by the custom to subject prisoners of war to hard labor, the Imam provided the prisoners with reasonable accommodations and had each soldier teach 10 Palestinian children how to read and write. For it is written in the Quran, quote, "Repel evil with good, and the one who is your enemy will become your dearest friend." When seen through this Imam's example, the commandment to love your enemies as yourself may truly take on new meaning. The Imam's strategy served several purposes It upheld the tenets of Islam. It benefited 700 children in a marginalized community with poor access to quality education and relieved the mistreatment of 70 prisoners. This was no easy task, however, for the child, the soldier, or the parent. Each had to reconcile negative stereotypes of the other in order for the child to acquire the gift of literacy. For the Israeli soldiers, this meant recognizing behavior in the Palestinian children that might remind them of their own children or younger siblings at home. For the Palestinian child, it might mean letting go of fear in the presence of an unarmed soldier whom they perceive as the enemy, and place their trust in the familiar surroundings and relative safety of the mosque. And for the Palestinian parents, it might mean suspending intense feelings over the personal losses of war to allow their child the opportunity to learn new skills that could have long-lasting and positive effects on their children's lives. In doing so, each restored the humanity of the other, and together they succeeded in disrupting the cycle of violence. One can only imagine how much courage it must have taken for each party to become vulnerable enough to learn this lesson. This is what David White calls the heartfelt, robustly vulnerable realigning of one life with another. We also visited a nonprofit peace organization that strives to empower women, youth, and children to cope with ongoing trauma and resolve conflict through citizen diplomacy rather than violence. The most difficult people to reach, we are told, are the men. The leader of the organization tells us they measure the success of their program by how many cups of tea they serve. If someone has 1 cup of tea, they're just being polite. 2 cups, they start to listen. 3 cups, and they're curious and want to learn more. 4 cups, and they start talking. 5 cups, and they want to change. And probably by this time, you're all thinking, and need to go to the bathroom. When we ask how we might contribute to the work of peace and reconciliation in Israel-Palestine, we were told, come, learn, see what we're doing that's working, and then go and do the same in your own country. We don't expect you to do our work for us. We invite you to go and do this work in your own country. Racism is everywhere. It doesn't only exist in Israel-Palestine. And at the time, I couldn't fathom what this might look like in my ministry. I was still in seminary. Now, 8 years later, it has become very apparent to me that this is the work we are doing as we strive to dismantle white supremacy in our denomination. Each time we engage a process of self-examination to make visible the ways in which we consciously and unconsciously uphold white culture, we are being called to love. During my temporary employment at the UUA as worship web assistant and chapel coordinator, I came to know the degree of vulnerability, uncertainty, courage, and commitment this work requires of us. The emotional labor is at times painful and exhausting for the oppressed and for the oppressor. When someone gives us the gift of awareness that something we have said or done is offensive or oppressive to a particular group of people with marginalized identities, the temptation to deny our complicity in an oppressive system, argue our intent, or withdraw our participation altogether from the conversation is great. This is what Robin DiAngelo calls our white fragility in her book by the same name. It serves only to preserve the status quo. Yet when we commit to understand how our actions affect those near or far from us, apologize for any harm done, and embrace a new way of being in the world, the rewards are even greater. Relationships deepen, mutual trust is renewed, and the world in that moment is a better place. French philosopher Camus reminds us, to live fully is to live closely and to the point of tears, with any new possibility made known inside us. This is the way of love. The way of love is a courageous path that is actually written in our theological DNA. Jesus's ministry of love, for example, transcended the social, cultural, ethnic, and religious norms of his day, norms that often created divisions. Sometimes I wonder if the healing miracles were allegorical depictions of what occurs when we recognize the humanity of the other as our own. Imagine how equity and inclusion must have restored a sense of wholeness and well-being to the people who could not see, hear, speak, or walk, who lived with mental illness or skin and blood disorders, or were from other countries or cultures. When someone recognizes our humanity, they recognize our worth. And it is this deep, positive regard that invites creativity and the possibility for change to occur. Love encourages us to overcome our limitations, to overcome how we see others. This is the transforming power of love, and it is nothing less than miraculous for those who experience and witness it. In his treatise on atonement, Jose Beau, one of the founding fathers of American Universalism, reminds us of our innate goodness as the creation of a loving God, and how we must reconcile ourselves to love when we do harm to another. Now, this was radical thinking in Beau's day, because Christianity espoused that Jesus died to reconcile us to love. Beau is saying it's much more personal than that. It's much more interpersonal than that. This is the work of the church, to grow in love with one another. In fact, love is the very principle upon which the church is founded, and the courage it requires was keenly felt by the disciples as they aligned themselves with Jesus's teachings amid persecution after his death. Each time we counter structures of oppression by centering the margins, we reconcile ourselves to love. As a people of faith, we covenant with one another to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. To do so, we must be willing to take the training wheels off our bikes, move beyond our comfort zone, and risk emotional exposure. That requires courage. David Wright tells us to be courageous is to make conscious those things we already feel deeply about, and then live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. Through story, song, study, action, and reflection, we come to know who and what and how we love and how we can deepen that love. Perhaps one way to overcome our white fragility as we do the work of dismantling white supremacy may simply be for us to remember how to love one another and ask ourselves, what would love look like in response to this situation? And then act accordingly. Much easier said than done. That's why we need each other. The way of love is a courageous path that invites us to risk uncertainty, emotional exposure as we explore new ways of being in the world. May we who are called to this faith have as many cups of tea as we may need to come limping and laughing into our relationships and keep us at it when we might otherwise despair at the fix we are in. For there is a transcendent value worthy of our loyalty upon which we may set our hearts, and its divine manifestation is love. May it be so. Please join me in humming or singing our closing hymn, number 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits in new faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our minds for justice, built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Thank you, Jacob, Dawn, and Mary. Beautiful. Our closing words are by Joseph M. Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. May it be so. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may each of us carry its light into every day of our lives.
Some announcements. Excuse me. Today at 11:45, the Development Engagement Committee will be meeting in the sanctuary on Zoom. Monday, the Connection Circle on Zoom, open conversation at 3:30 p.m. And Friday, the Friday Connection Circle on Zoom. And the topic will be Judy Presents Women Jazz Musicians. Okay, that's Friday at 10 a.m. And also, please note, Friday is the Chimes deadline for the October submissions. Next Sunday, the 26th at 10:30 a.m., the guest speaker will be Reverend Denise Colley on Zoom only, no in-person service. And also on Sunday at 3 o'clock, memorial service for Judy Rainey, in person and on Zoom. And Wednesday, September 29th at 4 p.m., the Spiritual Writing Group will meet on Zoom. Writing prompt will be, has writing ever felt like your best friend? Why or why not? All are welcome. And anyone else? Joe has some announcements, yes. And anyone else after that, please raise your hand.
Everyone, sorry, I've been busy trying to get refreshments ready. So just a couple of things. One is that today is the last day of the open studios down in Hull, and that's until 4 o'clock. It's already started. It's until 4 o'clock. Our very own members, Mike and Sal, are participating in the open studios. And secondly, in regards to next Sunday's memorial service, help is needed. I will be here at 2 o'clock for anyone who would like to join me and assist in setting up preparations. Anybody who would like to donate a lemonade or a tray of cookies, please let me know. We're going to need help with setting up a multitude of tables with tablecloths. The family's going to have their own separate room, which also needs to be set up as well. We have a volunteer for that. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will be sending out communication to Maggie and Sherry, our administrative staff, this week, so they can communicate to everyone by email. If you have any questions, please let me know, or if you need to, just contact the office and they'll refer you to me. Thank you.